Okay, at this opportune time, let's discuss about this. It's about the variable for research. This is a material that I've used before. So let's start this one. So when you talk about variables, this is about data. It could be quantitative or qualitative. And variables, this is an overview, so let's talk about that. And then connection to your framework and then sample work. Now, let's have this one. So data is an information that could be collected and then processed and then utilized to make some inferences, to make some generalization. Now, the data could either be this one. This is in line with your research. Now, when you look at it, if you're collecting a quantitative data, generally you want to generalize a data. However, if you look at now a qualitative data, you want to go on understanding now the data. Here is some example of a quantitative data and qualitative data in comparison with these factors. With quantitative data concerned with discovering facts, however, when you say qualitative, it goes with understanding behavior. When you go with analysis, you go with numerical comparison, while this one is themes identified by the users. Now, when it comes to the insight when it comes to quantitative is how much of a behavior is present in a group, while here is what are factors determine the behavior in a group. When you talk about reporting, we report it by statistical inferences. So you're going to work that out on the latter part. And then these are the language users or of the user. So we look at it like on the insight or interpretation of the user. An example of this one would be web analytics, and the other one is usability for testing. So here are the analysis here. Look at this one. In an oil painting, when it comes to qualitative, you look at these factors. There are blue-green colors, you check on that. Well, however, if you're on quantitative, you look at now on a dimension that is really measuring based on numbers. As you can see, here are the things that deals with numbers. Here it deals with description. Data which can be measured, can be observed but not measured. These are on the characteristic. Now, when you talk about a good research, it should have an objective, statement of the problem, and conceptual framework that are aligned. So this is how you do it. An objectives normally it's written in a paragraph form. Statement of the problem is very specific. It's itemized because that is the research questions, and then the conceptual framework is the model of your research. Now, these are your point of study. These are things that you could put in your statement of the problem, like describing like when you put what is the level of appreciation of students. When you talk about the relationship, is there a significant relationship between the grades in mathematics and English? Projection. What are the factors that is a indicator for success? Experiences. Technically, these are on the qualitative. You should at this like what are the experiences of students in using Canvas. Difference. You're now asking now two or more groups if there are significant difference in their appreciation about movie. Exploring all the insights, something like that. So those are your point of study that I could recommend. Here's some here is now your what do you call this? Something like I would like to share. A matrix of research. There should be a skeleton, a data gathering procedure and analysis. You can put this bit.ly RC Quanti Excel for more details about this one. Okay. Now let's look at the one another area, which is a variable or what we call the specifics of the research. Technically, there are two kinds of variable, the independent variables and dependent variables. Now, once again, in a framework skeleton of research and model, when you talk about independent and dependent variables, it goes with the word as well, but it's more nice to look at now an example. Now, this is a paper that I created way back 2013. The title of the research is Improving Competency Level of Students Through a Math Readiness Program. This is the research objective. As you can see, it is in a declarative form. However, it was converted to an interrogative form on the statement of the problem. Now, as you can see, the independent variable here are the proficiency level and math achievement. And then the program as well is working on the readiness program. It's also an independent variable. Another here, this is a paper that was been developed. This is a paper together with me. Together with me when we created this one is Ma'am Arcelia. However, it was developed, so I didn't want to look at this one. But before it was developed year 2022-2023. Now, always remember when you look at now on your research on your variable, you need to be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. Another thing is that simplicity is beauty. The simpler the better, however, take risk. Choose the right variables in your research. And I will help you with that when it comes to our consultation. Now, technically, you do have a question. So, this is now your assignment as the product output for the first quarter. Okay. So these are the things when you consider what's your vision, how to conduct the research. Is it quantitative or qualitative? Who are you going to be your respondents? So those are the things that I would like to ask you when we look at now your paper or your submission. Once again, this is what I really want to give you an emphasis. An objective is the paragraph form. Statement of a problem is the itemized on the interrogative form. Conceptual framework is the model. So these are the suggestion when you looking now an outline for your research. So it could be there are two independent variable and then recommendation, independent variable, dependent variable, and then testing for quantitative and then recommendation, independent testing and then recommendation, independent and then recommendation. Thank you very much for listening.